On today's 30-minute music marketing, branding for musicians. Cue title sequence.
30-minute music marketing for musicians who want to get better at marketing their music.
Hello, I'm Sheldon.
Hello, I'm Greg.
And this is 30-minute music marketing, the show for DIY artists and independent musicians who want to get better at marketing their music. That's you, hopefully. Hello, welcome, thanks for watching the show. If you're watching this live streaming on Facebook, hello to you. If you're watching it on YouTube at your leisure, hello to you. And if you're listening to us via our podcast on one of the many podcast platforms that there are out there, iTunes, Anchor, Stitcher,
Spotify, is that?
Spotify. Let me just go, hello to you. That was now. If you're watching this, I look particularly stupid there. Hello, thanks, welcome to what is going to be a two-part episode.
Controversial.
It's a topic so big they couldn't fit it all into one episode, and we're talking about branding for musicians. So because it's two parts, this one is branding for musicians, Infinity War, and the next episode will be branding for musicians, Endgame. So it's quite exciting. For me, I think branding is one of the most overlooked parts of the the arsenal that DIY musicians and all independent musicians have. It's one of the most overlooked things. People don't necessarily tend to either know what it is, know how to implement it. There's also certain perhaps negative connotations associated with branding, perhaps.
I think that certainly, if you speak to a lot of the people I've spoken to, the idea of branding is seen as, corporatisation, commercialisation, selling out, perhaps. But
so
I know you put on the thing caption one.
Caption one.
You put coffee. Why?
Coffee. Why? Right. Okay. Well, via the medium.
I was hoping that wasn't just a misprint, and I've just completely. But
No.
Okay.
Via the medium of you operating a non-linear editing package.
Yes.
In the future, you're going to be. If you can put on some sort of ding as you put this caption on.
Caption one.
Okay, so you might have seen something similar to this particular caption posted on a social network either sometime recently or sometime in the past.
So when I do ding,
yes,
they're going to be seeing the caption that I'm looking at right now.
Yeah, that you're looking at.
Which now makes sense when you put coffee. Right.
Yes. Okay. So for the benefit, so we've got the caption you're looking at down here. It's a wonderfully produced show.
There is a possible oversight.
Which is?
All the people listening to on our podcast.
Oh right. Well, don't worry. We'll be talking about it.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. So I hadn't thought, but sorry, podcasters.
You're making such a big deal.
Yes.
By the way, you won't actually see this, but we'll have to describe it.
Yes.
Orally.
There's going to have to be some audio descriptions coming about it. So. So I've seen various iterations of this, and it says people are willing to pay $5, or for people in the UK, £5 for a cup of coffee. Let me put my sarcastic voice on. That costs pennies to make. It only takes minutes to prepare, and it's gone forever after just one use. But people won't pay £1 for a song they like that costs thousands to record, can be used over and over again, took years of practice to create, and lasts a lifetime. So one of the reasons, well, I'll open it up to you on the floor, Greg.
Okay.
So why might that be? Why might somebody pay over the odds? Because let's face it, it doesn't cost $5/pounds to make a cup of delicious coffee. You know, those beans only cost pennies. So what's one of the contributing factors to people buying an overpriced cup of coffee?
Well, I think possibly. I mean, coffee hasn't always been popular. Not to the extent that it is now.
When we grew up, back in those, when the internet was in black and white, ladies and gentlemen,
and a dial-up.
Coffee was just something that it was...
The idea of going out for coffee was not something that would engage everyday conversation.
If you were able to go back to the future style,
yes,
to your 16-year-old self,
yes,
and say that in the future people would be paying maybe 10 times as much now for what is maybe a similar cup of coffee from 30 years ago, you wouldn't have believed your future self.
It would be a little bit weird to actually hear
It
that.
would.
You'd be like, say what? But the only thing I was going to say is that, if you were to kind of go back 20 odd years or so, people will spend £5 for a drink in a pub. Ultimately, I suppose the product has changed, but people still seem willing to pay, in this situation, over the odds for something that can only be consumed once.
But what I would do is I would go so far as to say in this particular examples, the main contributing factor because we know that, like, for example, if we were to go into our local town centre, you could go to the Lemon Tree Cafe and they'd probably give you a nice cup of coffee for maybe £1.50. Something along.
Yeah, I mean, there's a cafe near here.
But people are willing to pay.
I think sorry to interrupt. It's people are. It is this. You are presented via various forms of marketing. It's a lifestyle. It's not. You're not having a coffee. You're having an experience.
Oh, that's very good. The E word. Hold on to that. But that experience comes as part of a sort of a chain brand. So, in the UK,
you feel you're missing out on something if you don't experience it. You've got all the frozen coffees. You got the other. If you look at. I was going to say Starbucks,
those experiences are built as part of sort of an extension of a particular brand, and it's that branding, and it's all the marketing and maybe the accoutrements as part of that particular brand.
Oh yeah, the fact that you're aware of it.
Yeah,
is a big indication. The only thing is, sorry, I've just looked at your thing and I like the fact it says Popal.
Yes, there is a typo. Again, if you're on the podcast, I'm ever so sorry about this, but you're missing out on a wonderful typo on screen.
Why people do it, I have no idea. It is strange, and there doesn't seem to be any decline.
No, but that can possibly be our introduction as to the power of branding
and suggestion.
And suggestion, and the power that branding exhibits potentially over all of us.
And I mean, you put in here, and I would agree with it anyway, is the fact that, if you go into Starbucks or Cafe Nero or Costa, and if anyone wants to give us free coffee, we'll tell you their name as well. We'll actually make a bigger deal.
I don't drink coffee, so tea it will have to be.
I don't drink alcohol, so please, definitely coffee. Is the fact that you know what you're getting.
Yes.
If you go into a Starbucks and order a coffee macchiato, or however you pronounce it, I don't know.
Don't ask me.
And you know exactly what you're going to get, and so when you hand your £5 over, there's no sense of looming disappointment.
No, there is something to be said. Again, talking about the McDonald's experience, people like and will always go into McDonald's no matter where they are, because there is a certain amount of quality assurance, standardisation.
I've literally had McDonald's in Australia, in America, in Europe, in the UK, and he won't because he's a vegetarian, and I like slutty food. It's just the fact that there's no variation. You know exactly what you're going to get. And sometimes, if you're a fussy eater, which I'm not, but you're playing it safe.
So, let's maybe try and give ourselves a definition as to what branding is, so we can start to build on that and have a look at how, as a musician, how a branding might affect us in some way, shape or form. Now, so I'm going to turn to the trusted academic source that is Wikipedia. I think for this is an edited version. A brand is the, quote, name, term, design, symbol, or any other feature that identifies one seller's product distinct from those of other sellers.
Okay.
So, initially branding was adopted to differentiate one person's cattle from another by means of a distinctive symbol. So if you can imagine plain, field, whatever, cattle, cows, and there could well be different cattle owned by different farmers.
Yes.
However, in other words, if you were to try and if you need to separate those at any point, you wouldn't normally be able to do that. However, if the cattle have a brand on them, then there is a distinguishing mark which helps identify and differentiate. So if you think about yourself as a musician or as in a band, if you think about all the other people making the same sort of music as yourself, if you can use branding in order to differentiate yourself from all that competition, I would argue that branding and looking at branding as a way to do that would be a very good thing.
I'm going to think of something. It will come back to
okay, right. So here's another one. Definition of branding. So you've already touched on this. It can also be the promise of an experience and conveys to consumers a certain assurance as to the nature of the product or service that they will receive.
I mean, as an example, for those who are actually watching the podcast, the camera that we're using at the moment is a Sony. I bought that camera partly because I'm familiar with the brand and I know they make, pretty decent cameras.
Have you got brand loyalty, Greg?
To some extent, but it wouldn't. In this situation, it wasn't so much brand loyalty. If I want to go down the route of brand loyalty, I'll always buy Philips televisions. But I
like Panasonic televisions, by the way.
So, and it's really weird how people do have, they will stick with something through hell or high water for really no logical reason.
That's the thing. As we'll come on to see, a lot of branding works in a subliminal, subconscious fashion without us actually realising.
So, but I knew that at least with this camera made by that brand, that I had an idea of what to expect, and that reduces the guesswork. Okay, the camera wasn't $5 or £5, but it was, but you still kind of go, okay, there seems less of a risk when there is that sense of familiarisation. And yeah, you're right, in terms of if you're a band who plays metal, as an example, there does seem to be, though, and this is not just specifically that genre, it seems to be a lot of genre. Artists and bands seem to think that their uniqueness and their brand, not that they would call it that, would come from just the words they write. And I mean, there are certain genres that who will not go anywhere further than just this kind of, they won't go outside the lines. And it's like, I don't understand why you would want to almost basically just dissolve into a variety of a million and other bands who are exactly the same with no easily identifiable things. Or, I mean, for years and years ago, do you remember a dance music record label called Extravaganza?
Vaguely, yes.
Chicane was on Extravaganza, and I would buy records, buy those singles without even hearing them, because I knew that Extravaganza had that air of, this is going to be something I really, really like. And there were, obviously back then there was a multitude of record labels making dance and electronica, EDM for those in the States, but 20 years ago. And it was also like Renaissance, the promotions company. I didn't need to hear it. I didn't even need to see it. I just knew that coming out was going to be right up my street. And Apple used to have it when people used to queue outside the store for the latest iPhone. They
still do, but not in so many numbers.
No.
So yeah, some sort of assurance as to what you're going to get, and perhaps engendering loyalty amongst people who consume and buy and like what you do. So all these are differentiation, loyalty, assurance. These are all seemingly good things. Good things.
So if the first thing we can think of to do with branding is what I think is positive experiences that we've had to the idea of branding, and then not only that, but I don't think are negative things. Why is it? Do bands kind of go, oh no, I don't want to be seen as some corporate machine?
Well, they don't. They assume that just because corporations are experts in branding, that they will embody all the, perhaps what would be downsides of capitalism and therefore corporations. You can still basically use the same techniques, but without necessarily being as evil.
Yeah, but I never thought, Extravaganza, some capitalist corporate machine, they're up to no good. I went, hey, I know what I'm getting here, and I'm going to like it.
I don't know. I can't vouch for other people. I can only vouch for myself.
I don't know if I mentioned this before in one of the previous things, but when an old interview with Rob Zombie, and he was kind of saying about, in terms of, and about some fans came to him after doing a gig, and he's like, and they're like, oh, you're selling out, man. You're like part of this corporate machine. And the guy's like, I'm on my arse. I have no money whatsoever, and you're telling me I'm selling out. He's like, what do you do? And they're like, well, we work for McDonald's or a bank. And he's like, what? You're telling me I'm selling out and you're working for one of the biggest corporate machines? And it's just like, and it just made me laugh, but it's so true. It's just like, and there are people here, clients of mine, who are very, very against this idea of trying to brands because they see it as such a negative thing. And then you really, because they hate to be, this idea of being anti-capitalist. And then you kind of go, so what do you do for a living? Well, I work for a bank. It's just like, maybe their response is because I want to get so far away from that. I don't know. But you just kind of go, whoa. So have I gone off?
You've slightly deviated.
Sorry.
It doesn't matter. So, people love brands.
Yes.
I was just thinking then as to all the equipment that's associated with this particular production today. You've got a Sony camera, you've got Tascam audio equipment, you've got the Sennheiser?
Yes, Sennheiser mics.
Sennheiser, we're running an Apple MacBook just to run the presentation. So when we buy things, we do tend to always go for either what we know or what we think we know, and that tends to be with particular brands. And the thing is, the general public do tend to like some brands more than others.
Although at the moment Samsung don't seem to be doing particularly well with their folding phones. That seems to have broken quite quickly, and it wouldn't be the first time Samsung have had to.
Deviating again.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
We're just saying negative brand experiences.
Oh, yeah. So
what's the next slide, Sheldon?
The next slide, ding. Here it is, no doubt. If we're talking about brands and two brands fighting it out since the dawn of time, Coke and Pepsi.
Refreshing cola drink.
What they refer to as the Cola Wars, ladies and gentlemen. Coke's always been the bigger of the two companies. Pepsi has always been the rival, snapping at its heels. And Pepsi have been forever trying to find ways in order to get the leap ahead of Coca-Cola. And one of the ways, another slide. One of the ways that they've done that is, and they've done this since the 1970s.
That picture is from the 1970s.
The Pepsi Challenge, the Pepsi Taste Test. So this has been used on actual marketing campaigns throughout the years. They'll roll up to some sort of shopping centre, mall for our American cousins. Hello, and they'll do a blind taste test. 2 drinks. One's Coke, one's Pepsi, and they give it to a member of the public to say, right, taste those. You don't know which is which do you prefer? And they'll sample it. And the majority, and this is true, the majority of the people will turn around and go, oh, right, it's that particular one that I like. And the people behind the stand will go, congratulations, you like Pepsi. And what they'll then go is, oh, yeah, no, but I like Coke. Okay. And he said, no, but through taste alone, you prefer Pepsi.
When you remove the label and you present the product bare.
Yeah, but people, for the majority of the time, will return back and say, yeah, but I prefer Coke. But what they're actually saying is that they prefer what is probably best described, ding, as the Coke branding experience. Coca-Cola isn't just brown fizzy water. Ladies and gentlemen, it has all these extra associations.
A friend of mine here has actually just started working for Coca-Cola, and he was amazed at the amount of other drinks that they do. He was just like, they do that as well, and that. I did say to them what they like with unions, but he thought best not to say.
Best not to say. So the first one that we can bring to mind is it's Christmas.
Didn't they invent Father Christmas?
No, I think that's a.
Is that a myth?
I think you need to go on to Snopes.com for that one.
I thought they commissioned a drawing to something, and someone came forward with the picture of Father Christmas.
Has that been answer in the comments below?
Please let me know, just so I can sleep at night.
Right. So Christmas, one has associations. Holidays are coming.
Yes.
The Coca-Cola van. In previous advertising campaigns,
I'd like to teach the world to sing.
I'd like to have a Coke and a smile.
That wasn't that.
Happiness has been, is one
Eddie
of the...
Murphy did have a Coke and a smile and shut. Yeah, anyway, that's.
Did he really?
Yeah, it's funny.
You might be able to even insert a little snippet of that here. Friendship, putting names on bottles and associating Coca-Cola with friendship. And people, and the people that you know and love.
Did you ever find a bottle with Sheldon written on it?
Did I? Echoes like.
I don't think they did one with Greg, so.
And even nice little fluffy polar bears.
There's some irony there, isn't there? Now.
Well, yes, plastic, single-use plastic. No doubt in a future campaign, the polar bears will be hitting each other over the head with them.
Well, the one other thing, and again, please let me know if I'm wrong on this, but the company with the biggest marketing budget in the world is Coca-Cola.
Again, I cannot corroborate that fact.
Which is why they're the most recognised brand. And if you ask anybody to name a brand anywhere in the world, Coca-Cola is the most recognised brand name in the world.
Is this a fact you can definitely?
This was a fact from when many years ago when it was certainly information that was provided via a reputable research-based company whose name I can't remember.
It's that reputable, right? Focus,
it was Mintel.
Mintel. I love their soft, chewy mints. So back to the task in hand. Some people like Coca-Cola more than Pepsi because of all these extra associations and experience that they associate with the product. So the brand of Coca-Cola, the products of Coca-Cola is more than just brown fizzy water. That brand encompasses and has all these extra connotations and associations which engender an extra like ability.
Did the Coca-Cola come first with the Diet Coke before Pepsi?
I don't know.
The only reason being is then obviously they bring a product that's almost gender specific because Diet Coke was mainly marketed towards women, wasn't it? And then they decided to come out with Coke Zero, which is Diet Coke for men. So they've almost genderised to make something more relatable.
Let's not go into the gendification of soft drinks just
but
now. It's outside the
All right.
Outside the remit. So,
can I ask a quick question?
By all means.
Do you have because we've obviously the things you come forward with Coca-Cola. Again, I'll put the thing back up again in terms of the experience, which a lot of them I remember.
Yeah.
But do you have one for Pepsi?
No, I'm sure we could do one.
Because, but is that not a point in itself? If you can come forward with the idea of a Coca-Cola brand as a Coke brand as an experience, but we can't come up with something for Pepsi. The only thing I can remember to do with Pepsi as an experience is Michael Jackson burning his hair, which isn't a positive experience.
In more ways than one these days.
So,
Spice Girls, Beyonce.
Did she?
And that's about it. Yeah.
But there you go. This idea of constantly doing something more than just its core stuff, so it helps seep into people's subconsciousness.
So, by becoming a brand or using the bits of branding, you can become more liked. Think about Coca-Cola. You can differentiate yourselves from others. Yep. So musicians are in very much a crowded marketplace. You can become more than just the music because, as we know now, Coca-Cola is more than a soft drink. And you can, brands help you increase the value of what you're selling. So again, $5, £5 for a cup of coffee. I was looking as a way of an example. You're familiar with the fashion brand Burberry?
Yes.
Cost of a Burberry scarf. What was probably, I could go out, Debenhams, 10. Look, I'm a man of advancing years. Debenhams. I'm not going to go into next. They're starting giving me.
To be honest, you better stockpile on Debenhams because they might not be around.
They might not
be.
Yes. Again, for people outside the UK, references that you're probably not going to get. But you might expect to pay £10 to £15 for a quality scarf at a major men's outfitters. Even the term outfitters rubbish. How much is a Burberry scarf? I checked this on the internet, roughly.
At a guesstimate, I'd say about 80 quid.
It's about £300.
No
The
way.
power of branding, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, but didn't Burberry do, in some respects, their brand association and awareness, didn't it kind of backfire because loads of people started buying their stuff who weren't the kind of customer they wanted? And I'm using my words carefully.
That's as maybe, but we're outside the remit. Let's
I'm
focus
just saying
on
sometimes the association can work against, and then it works harder. It takes a while to kind of get that back. I'll shut up.
Okay, let's push things forward, as Mr. Skinner said. So how do you, as a DIY musician or independent artist, I've got a tickly throat again, how do you go about creating a brand for yourself? Well, the first step is the use of imagery. You've got to think about the fonts that you use, either in your logo or that's featured on your website or in terms of any of your maybe music releases.
So to begin with, to even go a step back before that is the idea of creating an identifiable logo, which some bands might not have even done that. They might have a band name and just use Times New Roman. As
Comic Sans.
No, please. Or Arial. In terms of, again, people might not have even thought that far to say, using something like Fiverr, just getting a vector drawing done by someone which is unique to you.
Well, we've got to take a step back, and I've got to introduce the very sensitive topic of semiotics.
Okay, this
Signs.
is going to be interesting. Yes.
This is going to be interesting in that I didn't
realise we're going to be doing a contextual studies lesson.
Well, all we're going to say is that whatever image you present to anybody, obviously there's the image itself, but there's a certain amount of associations, and that particular image or text can be read and decoded in a specific way. Whatever image you present to people, you're sending a hidden set of messages to people, often without them realising.
So let's take the example of one of the former members of staff here, whose name I won't mention, who likes his metal and his bands and stuff. And we see this, a lot of bands in a particular genre tend to choose fonts that are very, very similar. I understand the point of stylization to help you give the audience a clue as to where you're coming from, but does that not in itself become a problem because it almost becomes, again, oversaturation of similarity?
Well, what I would say there is that there are existing codes, and those existing codes, for the most part, have to be adhered to. Because the one thing I will say is that people's brains, despite us actually having the most powerful, computer there has ever been within our heads, our brains don't really like to be taxed on certain things. They like to be unbothered so we can concentrate on breathing and think about what we're having for tea. So we generally have to fit in with a set of existing design codes which subliminally send messages to our brain to say by reading this particular name in this particular font, that will give us some sort of clue and some sort of indication as to what genre they're in, and your brain goes, oh, I'm happy now. I know where this particular person's coming from.
Right.
So
is that familiarity, making sure that people that they know they're in the right place.
Now, which particular? So you're talking about.
But we got a lot more. I can't keep up with that.
No, don't. You've gone ahead and you've started talking about fonts.
Okay, go on.
So Bing. So again, apologies if you're listening on the podcast. Here's a couple of examples of some particular fonts. Now, what music genre would you potentially associate with that, Greg? Looking at that, this is spontaneous. I feel like a musician.
I couldn't tell you. Look at that and just kind of go. It is maybe something in the vein of. Some kind of
music.
electro pop.
EDM.
Yeah, maybe. Someone
in terms of the colours that are associated there, we're
Clean
talking
Bandit
neon.
kind of.
Yeah.
David Guetta.
Yeah.
Maybe something like that.
It's slightly futuristic.
Yeah.
It's sending, it's sending messages. It's signifying that if you use these particular fonts for your logo or for any other element of graphic design within your branding sort of package, you're sending a message to somebody to say that this particular person is an EDM artist.
I'm certainly looking. I'm not going to go. They're a hard rock band.
No. Okay, ding. On to the next slide.
one.
Here's a couple of examples.
This one's quite easily identifiable.
In terms of the colours. Colours use.
It's kind of old-fashioned.
Is that a serif? Is that what they call it?
It's almost like a calligraphy kind of style where it's all very over-accentuated.
Handwriting,
Yes.
Personal. Again, all these extra associations.
So are these actually real bands?
They are.
Are they?
I believe so.
Wow.
I think so. So again, alt, folky, country,
bluegrass.
yeah, that sort of thing. And there's a massive selection of metal logos.
And we've gone, the complete
ladies and
other opposite. Some of them are quite difficult to read. I won't lie. The one second up from the middle. I have no idea what that says.
No. I think that's part of the charm. It'd be great. I know we're talking about challenging codes and conventions. If somebody was to do a metal logo in Comic Sans,
I thought you did your logo in No, I'm joking.
It's called Porky. My band's logo is called Porky's.
Actually, talking of logos, then, what made you choose your logo for your band?
It was round.
And the ideology behind it?
The ideology behind it is that it was meant to be somewhat similar to a logo for a place called Wigan Pier. Not Donk Wigan Pier.
I realise. Northern Soul.
Northern.
Northern, right.
Northern, Wigan, just up the road. I'll tell you more about it later.
No, okay. That's
Off
camera,
show.
right.
Okay, so certain fonts imply certain musical genres, the use of colours. Again, there's lots of research, some of which is quite sort of contradictory about the associations that colours have. For example, orange is supposed to be very businesslike. I don't know why. There are
Is that some reference to the old network?
I don't know. So yeah, so fonts are important. If we have
Colours are important.
Colours are important. So if we think about band photography, now hopefully that everyone here, in terms of their publicity photos, get some nice, good shots done from a professional photographer. But the way that you dress in your photography, the way that you present yourself, even if you look at the camera, if you don't look at the camera, the way you are positioned in terms of your body, all those signifies and sends messages.
Quick question
to the
regarding
people.
that.
Yes.
Do you follow the advice of the photographer, or do you direct the photographer in something like that?
Well, what I would say is
because you've had professional photos done, haven't
yes.
you? And
but what I would say is, if at all possible, perhaps try and work with a photographer who's used to taking photos for music purposes, just so they potentially know what the end result should be. Because the difference between a good quality photo and a photo with a certain amount of embedded imagery, which is being passed on to the other particular person. So again, if you can use a photographer that has experience in this particular area, or the same with a lot of things, look at maybe other artists, and as soon as you see somebody who has got a really good sort of shot, and go, oh right, who did that? And then potentially use those. So ding, first one up is, now I know Rupert is a good lad.
Rupert who?
Rupert is the chap who's on screen now.
Okay, yeah, but I don't know who he is.
Well, you don't need to. Well, see,
what's his surname? Or is the artist name Rupert?
Well, no, it's. I'm not going to. Well, I'll tell you his name later.
Okay.
So I'm presenting a photo of Rupert, and indeed I'm presenting a photo. Again, apologies if you're on the podcast. Photo of
Should we
Rupert.
describe him?
him?
Has he got a beard?
He's slightly stubbly, as is the as is the fashion these days.
He's got a is that a leather jacket?
I think it's a leather jacket
With a denim shirt on underneath.
and he's wearing he's playing a nice
Hollow body, probably an 835
lovely
or a Gretsch.
guitar.
It's green. It's actually quite fetching.
So, what sort of music do you think he makes?
I reckon it was either indie or country kind of.
It's not country. He's wearing a leather jacket.
Leather? Well, I don't know. I would say indie from that part.
Yeah, he's a sort of a indie rock, singer-led sort of thing. But
He strikes me as someone who's in a four-piece band.
I'm not too sure. He might go out just as himself. But
Okay.
good old Rupert there. He's looking up. He's bright. Again in terms of
certainly
his
not
pose,
looking at the camera.
He's not looking at the camera, but he's looking. Is his music uplifting?
He
We
does
could
look
potentially
in a
read from
position
that.
of thoughtfulness.
He does. But he's looking up. Maybe is his music uplifting? I would probably say just from that photo.
Do you like his music? Well, I suppose you can't answer that now. Actually, ignore that question.
Rupert's good.
So the only
He's a-
thing
he's a
is,
good
though,
lad.
it could be that he might have gone, did I leave the gas on?
But if you, I'll show you some more photos of Rupert
Okay.
Sheldon, and you see he's smiling in quite a few of them. So he's
Okay. It is quite nice. Okay.
Okay, on to the next one. What we've got here is three people in what appears to be the what do they call it underneath a bridge? Where do the trolls live?
I know what you mean. Basically, it's the space that's usually turned into studios or car repair places if it's in our town centre. But yeah.
So it's in a pastoral setting. There's three people. We've got one person with a double bass, someone with a guitar, someone with a fiddle.
With a violin, yeah. The blokes all have long hair. They're both wearing blazers and jeans, and the lady is wearing, is it a denim jacket and certainly ankle-length skirt. So I get the impression they are possibly going to be a folk band or maybe country, but I'm inclined to say more gypsy jazz folk.
Folk it is. Well done, Greg. Now, the thing is, a lot of people go, is it really necessary to actually have our instruments with us? And unfortunately, yes, it is.
Really?
Yeah. Again, the brain does not want to be bothered. Give the brain as much information as you possibly can. If you play the banjo, if you play the acoustic guitar, when you're having your photo, get it in there.
My only critique of that photo,
Yeah.
the only thing that seems out of place is the guy and they always seem, obviously, you presuming from that picture the person in the middle is the front person of the band.
I'm not familiar. This is a group called Show of Hands.
Okay.
ladies and gentlemen.
My only the thing that I find that rather puts me off that picture is everyone else they all look pretty much like the folk thing, apart from the guy in the middle who's got everything right apart from the Vans on his feet.
He's comfortable.
Vans don't go
always
with-
wear what you're comfortable in.
He should have worn shoes like the other guy.
Now, if you're in an indie rock band,
Cue
ladies,
other picture.
bing. If you're an indie rock band, ladies and gentlemen, you probably need to wear
Is
a
that the same
stripy.
band?
No, it's not the same. Again, they all look the same.
So literally, out of this, and no word of a lie, for those who are listening to this, we have 9 pictures, and every single picture, they are wearing stripy tops.
There's one member wearing a stripy top, which is, again, we're talking about fashion
Every
codes.
single picture. And 5 of them are in black and white, and 1, 2...
There's lots of sunglasses
There
there
are
as well.
a lot of sunglasses. It's almost like you kind of go, right, they must run a class on how to pose for indie band photos.
I think they possibly do. So there's no room for any variation. There is a standardisation for an indie rock band
That is
photographer.
traced to the letter, isn't it?
I'm afraid there is. So again, if you're an indie rock band, when you're having your photo
You
done,
are not leaving-
You probably need to look like this.
You are not leaving anything to the imagination, are you?
No, but again, it's like with certain elements of photography, you just have to go pretty much
To the letter.
to the letter in terms of what the established set of rules are. And like I said, the brain is a funny thing. It doesn't want to have to think. It wants all the information presented to it, just so it's not on a back foot, as it were.
The only thing I would say with these pictures, again, for the listener out there rather than the viewer, is that the amount of people with indie haircuts is certainly getting less.
Yeah, I think that's possibly...
There does seem to be a slight moving forward. Right, okay. Is that David Guetta by any chance?
It's not David Guetta, no.
Is it somebody who wants to be like David Guetta?
Right, so...
He's got sex.
Describe, right, you're just going to say, describe for the podcaster at home, he's actually carrying some sort of control surface for turntables.
It looks like a Pioneer DJ controller, maybe a Newmark.
No idea. There is neon lighting in the background.
So
what sort of music are we associating with this chap here?
Possibly EDM.
It's DJ Fresh.
It is. Is it?
I think so.
Oh right, I wasn't sure if you meant DJ Fresh, as in it's fresh by a DJ, rather than the actual artist DJ Fresh.
Again, nothing is. It's like he's literally. Again, talking about the rules of photography, he's literally carrying around his mixing control surface with him. He's leaving nothing to chance.
You're right. There is. I'm not leaving any area for misinterpretation.
None whatsoever. It's spelling it out. It's pretty much band photography 101. So if you think about all these...
Have we got any more?
No. Oh, you were enjoying that then, weren't you?
Oh, yes, I was. It's actually quite interesting that you've gone to this now.
Ding.
About in terms of the visual identity in your packaging, or is your packaging.
Again, you know, we're trying to get away from the old sort of consumer and corporate, but I think we have to consider that all these visual aspects, you know, in terms of your typography, how you are photographed, maybe the clothes that you're wearing. If you think about music, which again is just a series of for the most part, zeros and ones, that all these, the visual accompaniment to it is, even though it might not be physically associated and actually wrapping those zeros and ones around it, it is very much the external packaging that people see and therefore associate with your music. And as in this particular instance, packaging can be influential, because I'm not so sure how it is in other countries, but in the UK, cigarettes now come in white packages. All the old style packaging on cigarettes has now been eliminated.
Well, I mean, and I would say the cigarette manufacturers have had a bit of a tough time, because they're not even allowed to advertise in Formula One anymore. So that, you know, their ability to actually let their brand infiltrate your mind has really been. I mean, this was being restricted even before this idea of literally you have to ask the cashier what brand you want. You can't. Although vaping seems perfectly fine, I find it a little contradictory. But yeah, it is. It must have a negative impact on the sale of cigarettes.
Sorry, I'm just doing it. You deviated again, Greg.
No, we're talking about cigarettes, and packaging is influential. And if you can't see the packaging, that's going to... But then again, you've never smoked, have you? So you're probably... So for someone like you...
That's what I mean, I'm
you're
not
bothered. But for someone... Well, OK, I'm an ex-smoker, but, you know, I find it must be a bit odd going up and buying a pack of cigarettes now if you got used to buying them when you could kind of go, I'll have those ones because the packaging looks nice.
When you think about every other aspect, if you're going into a store...
And it's there...
And again, the way that everything that you see, that the packaging has been designed to send you a certain set of signals.
Catch your attention.
And you know, again, if you are a cigarette manufacturer, how you are very much at a disadvantage. So obviously, we're now coming to the end of episode 1, but until we get to episode 2, I think. It's an opportunity for you, the listeners at home, to do a little bit of an inventory in terms of maybe your the banners on your social networks, on your Facebook page, on your Twitter page. Maybe have a look at all the artwork from anything that you might have up on SoundCloud, any of your official releases that are on Spotify, etc. Are you using the right fonts? Are you using photography that sends, and other graphic images that sends the right message to your intended audience. And if not, then that's maybe one of the things that you need to do. And again, let's have a look at your typography. Do you need to maybe amend things just so that things are a little bit slightly more on point and are telling the person at the other end exactly what it is that you're doing?
And I mean, from personal experience, people, the name of my company is Elusive Country Club, and people say I am true to the letter because they can't find us half the time.
So again, maybe have a look at your logo. Does your logo need refreshing? And if so, do you need to start looking around for new fonts and what have you to try and freshen that up and get it more on point?
Would you, on a serious question sort of
Yes.
things, if you've already started with your branding and maybe the concept, the ideas that we've spoken about today have not been implemented, would you see any negativity in saying to that person, hey, you rebranding yourself partway through your would that be a bad thing?
No, it doesn't necessarily. You can always adapt and improve. It's very unlikely that a band will use the same typography and maybe even the same logo throughout their entire sort of long-established career. Things will always change, and it may well be that for certain projects, certain typography and certain design elements will use, and things will change. There are very few bands. I mean, it does generally tend to be the legacy bands, like your AC/DCs and your Rolling Stones. And if you think about the classic Queen logo, which incorporates the 4 star signs of all the 4 members, there are very few classic logos that carry on all the way through from almost like the inception right the way through to the present day. So don't worry too much. Again, if you need to change things, and if you come up with a great logo, even at some point in your future, or in the very near future, just by reusing that one, that will eventually become your primary source of imaging. So yeah, it's lots to think about. And as we have a look in the next episode, we'll look at brand identity, and we'll have a look at other things associated with branding, again, which are perhaps even a little easier to implement.
Okay, but ultimately, branding and the supposed commercialisation of your band is not a bad thing.
No, branding itself is not a bad thing because it leads to all these great things. And if that in turn results in you getting more money at the end of the day for your music.
Or more awareness.
Or a stronger identity, and again, we'll come on to that more next week, then it's a win-win.
Okay.
Absolutely brilliant. Right, thanks very much for listening and tuning in. If you're listening on the podcast, please subscribe. If you're watching on the YouTubes, smash that subscribe button or whatever that means. Ring the bell.
Tick the bell or whatever.
Indeed. And we shall see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
See you later.